Hello and welcome to Eye on Africa, France 24's program focused on the continent. I'm Charlie James. Here's what's coming up. Police in DR Congo fire tear gas to stop an opposition march in the capital. Opposition leader Martin Fayulu forcibly escorted back home to stop him from participating in the rally. A French-speaking African economic bloc wants to rename their currency the ECHO. The problem? That's already the name claimed by another West African monetary group. Our correspondent explains. And peace talks result in a fragile truce in Nigeria's bandit conflict. But for the thousands of people displaced by the violence, it's not enough to ease fears. An attempted protest march in the Democratic Republic of Congo was broken up by police on Friday. The unauthorized event in Kinshasa was the latest organized by former presidential candidate Martin Fayulu. Police turned out in force, firing tear gas to break up the crowd. Fayulu was taken back to his home by security forces, ensuring he could not demonstrate with his supporters. Simon Harding tells us more.
A protest in Kinshasa, called by Martin Fayulu and violently dispersed by DRC authorities. The march was described as illegal by the police, who stopped Fayulu from protesting with his followers, instead escorting his car back to his house.
They took my money from me. They hurt me. I wasn't even marching. Do you see how badly injured I am? Do you see how badly injured I am? I wasn't even marching.
The 2018 presidential election runner-up was demonstrating over the government's inability to stop civilian massacres in the east of the country.
We're here for a cause. The reason is balkanization. On the administrative level, the DRC is already balkanized. It just needs to happen in practice.
The Congolese army continues to engage ADF rebels in the Goma region and say they recaptured their stronghold near the town of Beni earlier this week. The armed Muslim rebels, originally from Uganda, have been waging war in the east of Congo for almost 30 years and are responsible for some of the worst civilian massacres in the country. Now back in the political spotlight, Fayulu, the main opponent of Felix Tshisekedi in the 2018 elections, was believed to have won the vote, but lost out in controversial fashion. He was also supported at the time by the powerful Catholic Church. His appeal to the Congolese Constitutional Court was rejected, but he has since maintained that he is the legitimate president, calling for protests since January 2019.
Libyan strongman General Khalifa Haftar secretly flew to Greece on Friday. His visit is an attempt to counter Turkey's support for his opponent, Libya's UN-backed government. World powers are trying to mediate a permanent ceasefire between the two sides. 9 months of fighting has killed nearly 300 civilians and displaced tens of thousands. This weekend, another summit on Libya will be held in Berlin. Greece was not invited to take part in the negotiations, despite expressing interest. Still, the nation's foreign minister sounded optimistic about its prospects.
We have encouraged General Haftar to join the Berlin summit with a constructive spirit and to work towards a ceasefire and restoring security in Libya by removing his mercenaries and by recognizing the non-validity of the illegal agreements between Turkey and the Libyan government.
There's a money dispute going on between some English and French-speaking African nations, but it's not about a payment or debt. It's over a name, ECHO to be exact. You see, 8 Francophone countries have announced plans to rename their currency, the CFA franc, as the ECHO this year. But that's already the planned name of a single currency being created by the 15-nation West African Monetary Zone. Our correspondent, Chinwe Asundu, with more from Lagos.
Accepting a single currency for the West African states, ECOWAS, is becoming a big deal for the layman on the streets. Thus, we sample some opinions in Lagos, and here is the reactions.
There will be free movement of goods and services across the ECOWAS country. You know, for instance, now you are traveling within the ECOWAS country for a shopping. You have to convert your naira to their currency. But if of course, it has been agreed, it will boost our economy when it comes to trade, that is commerce.
I think ECOWAS currency is fine. But if they are very sincere with it, it is going to be good for a business and other relationship to the Africans. So if you are not put selfish interest on it, I think it's better.
But of course, we want to know if it's a win-win situation for Nigeria, for the Naira, which has been in circulation since 1973. What will become of the Ghana's currency and Guinea as well? The English West African states members gathered in Abuja to really assess whether the ECO is a profitable deal for their economy.
This is dead on arrival. I think we want to be a bit polite about it. That's just the truth of the matter. There's nothing Nigeria can do with ECO, absolutely nothing. And even Ghana, that made a positive statement, said it's still conditional upon removing the peg, which means, I mean, you like something, but you don't like the essence of it, which is the peg to euro. So as far as Nigeria is concerned, we'll just continue the way we are doing now.
Now let's take a quick look at some other top stories from across the continent. The latest round of peace talks between South Sudan's two rival leaders has failed to strike a deal on the vital issue of internal boundaries. Critics accuse President Salva Kiir of reorganizing state boundaries to strengthen his power. This has hobbled talks with rebel leader Riek Machar. The two men have agreed to a week-long arbitration process to help resolve the dispute. Thousands of Algerians marched for the 48th Friday of Iraq demonstrations. Held across the country, the protests aim to keep pressure on the newly formed government and demand political reforms. The movement has already forced the resignation of a veteran president and put top officials behind bars, but supporters are demanding a complete overhaul of the power structure. And the worst locust plague in 25 years invades the Horn of Africa. About the length of a finger, the insects fly together by the millions. Swarms have been devastating crops, posing an unprecedented threat to food security in already vulnerable countries. Unusual climate conditions are partly to blame. For decades in northwest Nigeria, local citizens' defense militias have been in conflict with armed groups, nicknamed the bandits. Now it appears a peace deal has been reached between native farmers and Fulani herders, but many civilians caught in the middle of the violence over land and resources are still afraid to leave their displacement camps.
In this local government office, local farmers organised into citizens' militias are cautiously laying down their arms. In exchange for ending hostilities, local authorities in the Zamfara region have promised new employment opportunities for the militia members and the so-called Fulani bandits.
We should keep our weapons. We do not kill any Fulani or any other person. We should stop what we are doing. Based on his advice, we accept. That's why now we be a normal people.
Mere months ago, Hassan was a wanted man. For 8 years, he led a force of over 1,000 so-called bandits, camping out and planning raids from the region's dense forests. He insists that he only got involved as a matter of self-defense.
They set fire to my village and killed my parents. What were we supposed to do? Just wait and let them carry on attacking us?
The conflict has caused an internal displacement crisis, with many thousands of people fleeing their homes to escape the raids and kidnappings. With the violence previously showing no signs of abating, the camps set up for the internally displaced have swollen. Last year alone, as many as 40,000 people also sought refuge in neighbouring Niger. In light of the New Deal, authorities are now encouraging people to leave the camps and return home, but not everyone is convinced.
I love my village, but because of these bandits, I will never be able to return home. Even if they have left the big cities, they are still in the bush. They terrorize us.
Despite the peace deal, some local farmers in the citizens' militias admit to keeping hold of some of their old weapons. They still fear that hostilities may one day return.
And finally, it's a world record you probably didn't know existed, but South African Vernon KRUGER is set to break it. The longest amount of time pole sitting in a barrel. It's just what it sounds like, living in a barrel on top of a pole. He has a crew of people helping out on the ground, sending up food and taking out waste. On Monday, KRUGER will break the current record with 67 days in the barrel, but plans to stay an unknown amount of time longer.
Sleeping in this barrel is not very easy. I've had a lot of cramps and pain in my back since I've been up here. It's a very small place to curl up in, and I have to lie in a fetal position. I do wash. I have a little basin that I fit in here, and then I wash. Say twice a week I'll have a bath.
That's certainly one way to get your name in the record books. Thanks so much for joining us for Eye on Africa, and do stay with us here on France 24 because there's more news you need to know coming up next.